The sum and the substance and the theme and the conclusion of this week's national interest is that it is naive to expect nations to let their strategic choices be determined by morality. Nations act only in their own self interest. All else comes later. So let's start the argument with a trick quiz question, and please no googling. What, when, and why did Operation Searchlight happen? What was it? When did it happen? And why did it happen? Operation Searchlight. Those who know the answer immediately from the top of their heads will also figure out why I am bringing this on the Russian invasion of Ukraine and India's position on it. India's repeat abstentions at the UN votes. Frankly, even Bangladesh has now decided to vote against Russia. But in spite of that, India has steadfastly abstained. So India's abstentions and India's ambivalence has drawn Western criticism and taunts of immorality. Hi there, India. You have pretensions to be a Vishwaguru, no? Vishwaguru? Some hypocrisy over this destruction of a much smaller state by a military superpower. How long can you afford to be silent? And at what cost to your moral stature internationally? These three things are easy to answer, the three questions posed here. To be a Vishwaguru or not is an ideological proposition that not a lot of Indians vote for. In any case, it's a work in progress. Even for its proponents, the BJP and RSS, the time to think about it is not now when Chinese PLA is staring down at India and Ladakh and elsewhere, about 100,000 of them. On the second question, we would reverse the equation. India, in fact, forget being able to afford to be ambivalent. India actually has a prudent need to be silent until it can afford to speak out. As for moral stature, we need to expand this debate a bit, and that is where Operation Searchlight comes in. The day this video column is being recorded and you are watching it is coincidentally the 51st anniversary of the day the Pakistani army launched its crackdown in what used to be called East Pakistan. They unleashed over the next 250 days one of the greatest mass atrocities in post-World War II history in the entire world, maybe only rivaled later by the Khmer Rouge. Millions were killed, maimed, raped, and more than 10 million, that's more than 1 crore people, were forced to seek refuge in India. That's more than 3 times the Ukrainian refugees in neighboring countries yet. Of course, Ukraine bothers a lot of the privileged world so much more because it is happening in the heart of Europe and not in the usual places such as Africa, Asia, Latin America in that order. This is a war that a much bigger country has launched over a smaller one, albeit a country with a military. The havoc of those 8 months in East Pakistan, 1971, was wreaked by an almighty army which also owned the government under a military dictator, namely General Yahya Khan. And this was on a population that was as defenseless as it was poverty stricken. Please see the pictures of those refugees in 1971 coming in from Bangladesh. Today, Bangladesh may have grown so brilliantly as to have a per capita income way higher than the sibling Pakistan that tormented it. It is still much lower, much lower than that of Ukraine. The name that the Pakistani army gave that campaign of murder, rape and pillage was Operation Searchlight. Since questions of morality are being raised on India's silence or ambivalence over Ukraine, it should be instructive to check the voting record and public positions in the Western world, particularly Washington took on that mass murder. Did they have the moral high ground? Supporting Pakistan, voting against India all the time? Which is where I make my central point. No nation, weak or strong, rich or poor, has its foreign and strategic policies determined by morality. Any nation that claims so won't survive a 10-second fact check. So here are some. Switzerland, with its eternal neutrality and its God-given right to fatten itself on the ill-gotten wealth of the stolen money of thieves, thugs, mass killers, dictators and despots from across the world. The super moralistic Sweden, supporter of all righteous causes and activists and NGOs in the world, which paid bribes in a country as poor as India to sell its artillery guns, namely Bofors, and never bothered bringing anyone to account in 35 years. America, which becomes so holier than cow when the Russians invade Afghanistan, but have zero compunction, occupying the same sovereign nation and leaving it in ruins, and that too under the control of the Taliban. The Russians at least made an orderly retreat from Afghanistan and left behind a government, Najibullah's government. It didn't last very long, but there was a government, it lasted 3 years. Or the morality lectures over Ukraine about 2 decades after laying waste Iraq on the fraudulent claims of Saddam Hussein possessing nuclear weapons. Now come the Chinese. As a citizen of India, the leading member of what I describe as the Chin Pidit Samaj or the Society of China's victims, I am fully within my rights to say, give me a break and go to hell. Don't lecture me. Britain, that went as far as the Falklands to fight with Argentina for some disputed island territory so far away from Britain, and carried out the sinking of the mostly defenseless and harmless old cruiser General Belgrano, much in the nature of a colonial reprisal. Or check out the fate of the Chagosians and the fight that Mauritius is waging to regain its rightful territories, which also include, by the way, Diego Garcia. Now, we are not judging any of these great nations on the touchstone of morality. It is naive to expect nations to let their strategic choices be determined by morality. Nations act only in their own self-interest. All else comes later, and the nations that don't act primarily in their self-interest perish. They can't survive. Surveying the world now, the positions that the key Islamic nations have taken now on the oldest post-World War issue concerning them, that is the Palestinian issue, it teaches us the same lesson. Today, most of the powerful Gulf states, Egypt first of all, and most of the powerful Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, Sudan, even Qatar, have mostly dumped the Palestinian cause. Super Islamist Erdogan's Turkey has just given the president of Israel a kind of reception reserved for some jigri dost, an iron brother, a stalwart ally. You can choose the name or description, whatever you call it. Iran, on the other hand, wages distant proxy wars for the Palestinians, even at the cost of further breaking Syria, destroying Syria and Lebanon. Tehran's leverage with the world, particularly the West, comes from Israeli fears over its nukes and missiles. Once that check is cashed, mark my words, see how long the Iranians endure Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis and the rest. Now, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi can be an honored chief guest of sorts at the OIC summit in Islamabad, and there he can upbraid India over Kashmir. His own government, meanwhile, keeps beating upon the Uyghurs, and the leading lights of OIC, especially Pakistan, whose Prime Minister Imran Khan, until he's there, claims credit for having the UN declare an annual day against Islamophobia, don't dare to open their mouths to even whisper, not even a chew from them. They are being cynical and selfish, but not immoral. That's my point. Nations are cynical, selfish, but that doesn't make them immoral, because they are all acting in what they see as their supreme national interest. Of course, nation and leaders can draw a wrong understanding of their national interest, but that is a different argument. In this case, for all these Islamic countries, members of the OIC, they are all sucking up to China in their national interest, leaving the Uyghurs to their own devices, even though they are Muslims, because for them, national interest comes first, the Ummah comes later. To question China over the Uyghurs, for example, Pakistan will need to redefine its national interest as something other than Kashmir and permanent chronic enmity with India. Until then, the plight of Uyghurs suits the Pakistanis. Why do I say so? Because the more the Chinese are insecure about Xinjiang, the greater their stake in control over Xinjiang's largest contiguous Islamic neighbor, namely Pakistan, and also a nation which is an exporter of fundamentalist Islamist views and fundamentalist Islamic forces and ideas. So again, what is the conclusion? National interest above all. Now, India suffered from moral delusions of grandeur for too long. Until say 1991, Indian foreign policy was pro-non-alignment, pro-Soviet, pro-Palestinian, anti-apartheid, anti-Zionist and so on. They were long junctures, however, when India's foreign policy and strategic policy wasn't sufficiently pro-Indian. I chose 1991 because this is when PV Narasimha Rao made the first step away from the Cold War freeze of non-alignment as a lousy cover for being a Soviet ally. Actually, I'm tempted to say Soviet stooge, but out of respect for ourselves, I'm not saying that. But if an India looked the other way at the UN over the Kampuchea/Cambodia issue, Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, India was being more like a stooge than a mere friend. But again, in the days of the Cold War, probably there was no choice. It's only in 1991 that Narasimha Rao broke away and established full diplomatic ties with Israel. Why Israel now? For decades before that, India had voted, screamed, raised holy outrage against the Israelis and the West for the sake of the Palestinians. Check out the voting records of the Arab states on the other hand and the positions the OIC took during India's wars and terror crisis. Always against India. In fact, Jordan's transfer of about a squadron plus of F-104 starfighters to Pakistan in the 1971 war is well documented. Today, if the same Arab countries have completely reversed their positions on India, it isn't because they have become immoral or un-Islamic. This is not an argument for or against Modi government. Any Indian government at this juncture would have voted and spoken exactly this way. It isn't just about the vast Indian dependence on Russian origin military equipment either. It is also about trust. India has been the recipient of the severest sanctions for nearly 3 decades after Pokhran 1974 and Pokhran II in 1998. It took then Jaswant Singh, the Vajpayee government, Stroop Talbot, US government under Clinton presidency, a lot of doing to get rid of the sanctions. Meanwhile, the US plied Pakistan with F-16s and more, overlooking its much more advanced and ambitious nuclear weapons program with full Chinese support. China is the greatest proliferator in the world. And why did the Americans act this way? Because their jihad in Afghanistan was to be won, you see. Could India have survived or carried on without deterrence when two vicious nuclear powers, let's call them Bada Putin, Big Putin and Chota Putin, the tiny Putin, they were threatening India in cahoots with each other. But when India demonstrated the same deterrence, sanctions followed. So where does trust come from? These are just a few of the reasons we can't examine India's policy on Ukraine in terms of morality. You might say it's not prudent, but you cannot question it in terms of morality. And if you do, turn that moral searchlight within. Now you also know why I invoked that Operation Searchlight to begin with.